Okay, greetings. Welcome to the 2025 series of Transforming Assessment webinars. Today we have an interesting session on interactive oral assessments. We're going forward from a topic that we've covered this before back in 2020. So Leila and Stephanie from University of Auckland, would you like to begin, please? You might need to, yep, there you go.
Thanks, Matthew. Kia ora koutou. Hello, everyone. I'm Leila Boyle. I'm a senior tutor at the University of Auckland, where I teach and support undergraduate students in the Department of Statistics.
Kia ora, everybody. My name is Stephanie Budgett. I'm Associate Professor here at the Department of Statistics at the University of Auckland. I teach across all levels of statistics, undergrad and postgrad, and it's really nice to be here this evening. Oops. So welcome to this webinar on Leila and I will be sharing our experiences with you on our use of interactive oral assessments in first year. And so I'll just give you a very brief overview of the way that our presentation will run, and then I'll hand over to Leila. So our outline this evening is, first of all, Leila will talk through what an interactive oral assessment is. I will then talk a little bit about our specific context, so talk a little bit about the course that we ran the interactive oral assessment in and the students that we are teaching. And then I'll pass back to Leila, who will talk a bit about what we learned and the trials and tribulations and the processes that we went through when we implemented our first interactive oral assessment. So I'll pass back now to Leila.
Thanks, Steph. So our students' verbal communication skills are vitally important, and they help them to not only get jobs, but to keep those jobs while building and maintaining the connections that matter throughout their careers. Over the past 9 or 10 years, the group of people listed at the bottom of that slide pioneered and longitudinally studied the impact of a new authentic oral assessment form called interactive orals, which has now been extensively trialled right around the world, including at the University of Auckland. So as the definition here states, an interactive oral is an efficient and effective form of authentic assessment that promotes skill development and employability, enhances overall student engagement and a personalised approach to learning and teaching, and preserves academic integrity. So these interactive oral assessments, or IOAs for short, work across disciplines. They foster genuine conversations where students apply course concepts in industry and real-world scenarios. In their IOA, students can demonstrate their ability to extend and synthesize discipline knowledge and skills in diverse contexts, showcasing their proficiency and adaptability at the same time as developing their conversation and communication skills. So hundreds of academics globally have now implemented IOAs in their courses, benefiting thousands and thousands of students every year. And this led to the research team at the bottom of the slide being able to propose an evidence-based model supporting an authentic assessment design, including IOAs. So in this slide, you can see at the bottom, the key objectives in blue: student engagement, employability, and academic integrity. So to address those, the 6 characteristics in yellow at the top need to be in place. So if interactive orals or IOAs are a part of a scaffolded assessment design with supporting resources like video examples and rubrics, if they're scenario-based and aligned with the program or the course objectives, if they're effectively measuring course learning outcomes, if they're accessible and equitable and professionally focused, then students report high engagement, recognition of employability skills, and reduced cheating. So this design also aids in the development of communication and conversation skills, and easily detects academic misconduct, because in a conversation, students cannot successfully extend and synthesize work that they haven't undertaken themselves in the first place. So what exactly is an interactive oral? So it's not a viva voce exam. They're both oral assessments, but they're quite different oral assessments. And there are probably a number of oral assessments that you're familiar with, and an interactive oral is none of these either. So an interactive oral is not an oral exam or viva voce exam. It's not a formal question and answer session, and both of those can be quite stressful. IOAs are not highly rehearsed one-way in-class poster presentations or group presentations, and they are not memorized, edited, and pre-recorded videos. So what are they exactly? So interactive orals, IOAs, use conversation prompts, not questions, and responses are conversational, rich, and designed to be two-way. So the prompts assist the marker and the student to replicate a conversation that would take place in an authentic setting, such as a workplace environment or scenario. So a genuine and unscripted conversation conducted naturally with normal communication cues. So some umming and ahhing and pauses are to be expected. The authenticity involved allows students to bring resources to the conversation, as they might do in their job in a normal industry setting. So for example, notes, references, spreadsheets, charts, infographics, whatever is relevant for your particular discipline. And whenever possible, IOAs are scaffolded to and from other assessments, engaging students throughout the course. So they can serve as final assessments, consolidating learning across a course, or sit in a capstone course, consolidating learning right across the program. Alternatively, they can be low stakes mid-semester assessments, which is the type of IOA that we opted for. So I'll hand back to Steph now to talk about our context.
Okay, thanks, Leila. So yes, so just a little bit about our context. So the course that we ran the IOA in is our Stats 150 course. It's not a traditional introductory statistics course. So it's the course that's really designed to build students' statistical literacy skills. And this course was originated back in 2004, so it's been running for more than 20 years now. And it's becoming more and more relevant as we are being bombarded with information-based data in the media and literally everywhere we look. So the key here is to give our students skills to critically evaluate information that they encounter in their daily lives. So really we want to build critical consumers of information and statistics that they will meet from day to day. So our students will not all be statistics majors, indeed some of them will be, but we have law students, we have students from arts faculty, commerce students, and in fact this course was very much designed thinking about students who maybe are not majoring in quantitative subjects, to expose them to the use of statistics in the media particularly. So you can see the image there of newspapers. I know they're sort of old-fashioned now, but we very much rely on resources from the media, and we use topical examples wherever we can. So that's just a little bit of context about our course for the setting for the IOA. This slide is just a screen grab from our digital course outline for our Stats 150 course. It's called Communicating Statistics, and you'll see up there a very brief course prescription and our learning outcomes. The capability numbers sitting alongside those learning outcomes just indicate our graduate profile attribute here at the university. So our learning outcomes are all linked back to our graduate profile attributes, which are the skills that we expect students to have when they leave us at the end of their degree. So to just highlight the learning outcome that we were addressing with our IOA, it was this first one. So to critically evaluate a statistically based study and communicate and justify a judgment on the study. And so the idea here is we have the students read an article, a media article that reports on a statistical study. It could be a survey, it could be an experiment or observational study, and they have to evaluate that study. We give them a list of critical questions and worry questions that they might want to ask about the study. And in the process of that critical evaluation, they systematically addressing issues that may arise and thinking about the properties and the characteristics of that study. And then they're asked to make a judgment about whether they believe the results of the study, whether it's convincing them of something, or whether they would need more information. So that's the learning outcome we're addressing in our IOA. So our assignment resources that we give to students is that each time we offer the course, we search out a media article on something topical of interest to the students, or at least that we think will be of interest to the students. And this particular assessment, we find an article that reports on a sample survey. We also find the accompanying survey report, because obviously the media article doesn't necessarily tell us everything there was to know about that particular survey. It can be quite challenging to find an appropriate article. Often media articles report on surveys and then the accompanying survey reports are hundreds of pages long, and we don't want to burden our students with that. We're also really try to find something that we believe will be of interest to our students, and so often we're looking at surveys that are carried out on students in New Zealand, and if we find something that's suitable, then that's always a plus. So prior to our last iteration in 2024, we would have our students use the guidelines and worry questions that we've introduced them to in the course and also modeled the use of several times. They evaluate the study using these worry questions. The worry questions are things like, who was studied, how were the samples selected, who funded the study. Lots of questions that you might want to know the answers to before you were prepared to make a judgment on the study. So evaluate the survey using these guidelines and worry questions, then they make a judgment of the news article, and then those two items were uploaded to our learning management system, Canvas. Since then, or in 2024, our IOA took a very similar form, but nothing was submitted on Canvas. Instead, we had our students all participate in an authentic interactive oral assessment with us for 5 minutes. So the idea was analyze the study using the guidelines and worry questions, and then we will have a conversation with you about your justification for your evaluation of the study. So just to show you what we used in our last iteration for the IOA, our news article was taken from stuff.co.nz, which is an online news outlet here in New Zealand, and it was an article that reported on a sample survey that was carried out by the New Zealand Law Student Association, and it was all to do with education and well-being in the law student space. So we felt that this was of interest to our students and something that they could certainly identify with and be maybe invested in. The headline for the Stuff article is very misleading, and so it's always it's beneficial to find media reports that maybe don't tell us the full story. And in this case, another issue with the way that the survey was reported was that while there are about 9,000 law students in New Zealand across our 6 law schools, the sample that was obtained was not representative of the numbers of law students across those different institutions. So that was one of the things we were hoping that the students would pick up on. So we're thinking about representative samples being desirable, not always possible in this type of survey, but nevertheless, what might be the considerations if your sample is found to be non-representative? Okay, and back to Leila now, who talk you through the process.
So the main reason that we did this is because we found in 2023 that there was evidence of a number of students using Gen AI tools to generate their written submissions that they submitted to our learning management system. So that was the main reason that we went looking for alternative assessments and decided to do IOAs. Here are some summary stats about our class. So we had 122 students enrolled at the time of the IOA, which was at the midpoint of the semester, and 94% of them did the interactive oral assessment. We did half each, roughly, and we allowed the students to choose their preferred mode. So we said they could choose to come in person or to attend on Zoom. And we got a bit of an idea by shows of hands in our lectures and in tutorials to see what students would probably choose. And we thought it would be about a third in person and 2/3 on Zoom, which worked out to be roughly the case. The timing of the assessment was lecture week 6. So we have a 12-week semester with 2 weeks in the middle as a mid-semester study break. So it was just about the halfway point. And almost all of them managed to do their IOA in that week. And we had a little bit of flow into the mid-semester study break that we had to mop up. So some of that was honestly students not being able to make the times that we made available. And then there were some calamity students that had issues, couldn't join the Zoom, for example, or had to just had an emergency that they had to deal with. We each spent about 10 hours doing them and marking them. So Steph said earlier it was a 5-minute conversation that we had with them, but the appointment slot was 10 minutes. And the remainder of that time was welcoming them to the conversation and then kind of wrapping up at the end of it and then doing the marking. And yeah, human nature being what it was, the prep and setup took much longer than we had hoped or expected. So if you're thinking about doing this, we suggest that you take that into account. So we needed to make room in our timetable for preparing and doing the IOAs. So we had a couple of briefings and lectures in weeks 3 and 5, and that required being very disciplined about the remainder of the lecture material to carve out a couple of 20 to 30 minute slots to do those briefings and allow the students to ask questions. We also did some modelling in tutorials. So in the week 3 tutorial, which followed the week 3 lecture briefing, we modelled it. Steph and I did a example video, which we then marked in the tutorial using the rubric that we provided to the students. And then there was some time at the end for students to practice an IOA in pairs, each taking a turn at the role of student and the role of marker. And then in week 6, we cancelled the tutorial sessions so that we could use those times. It was about 3 hours to have IOA appointments. And we also made other hours available for students to book into their session. So the weighting was a little bit strange. It was 15%, but we shrunk it down to 13%. And that was because of what we did with the tutorials. So we transferred 2 quite calculation heavy tutorial sessions into a quiz format instead. and made each of those worth 1%. The marking was a very broad brush approach. So the marking rubric that we created was a 0, 1, 2, or 3 rubric, and what they needed to do to get 0, 1, 2, or 3 for each criterion was described. And if we were at all unsure where a student fell, if we were dithering between 2 and 3, for example, then we would go to the higher option, go for 3. We found it incredibly enjoyable. It was really fun having those one-to-one interactions with students, and we intend to continue with it this year. We learned a lot, so the next iteration will be much improved and more efficient. And would like to thank Danielle, Logan Fleming, and Hira Kim and Anne Mackay for their support. So I did see that Anne was on the call tonight. So hi, Anne. Thank you for your support. So Danielle Logan Fleming was named in the resources that we had at the beginning of the slides. She is an Australian researcher who initiated these types of assessments, and she was incredibly supportive, helping us set it up. And then Hira and Anne work at the University of Auckland, supporting staff to do these types of things, create new types of assessments. I see Carl is, said what we think about Anne and Hira. They were really great. So we've got some information that we got from a student survey. So at the end of each IOA, we told the students that we'd be emailing them a link to the survey, and it was anonymous. We made it clear that filling it in would have no effect on their mark, and we closed it off at the end of the mid-semester break, so 2 weeks after the IOAs took place, and then released the IOA marks following the survey being closed off. So we got quite a good response rate. So 72 of them responded, or about 63% of the 115 who did an IOA. And I'll just go through these because that's very small. You probably can't read that. So the first question was, I felt well prepared for the IOA. So you can see majority of them felt that was definitely true or somewhat true, which we were very relieved about doing it for the first time. We were worried about the scaffolding and support of the students, but most of them seemed to think that we did an okay job at that. During the session, I was able to share my point of view. So 50% definitely true, but under 40% somewhat true. IOA resembled a real-world scenario I might find myself in. Again, a majority felt that was somewhat to definitely true. The IOA has real-world relevance and is an authentic assessment method. So nearly half of them definitely true, 40% somewhat true. After the IOA, I felt more confident in my ability to explain and justify. So again, we've got a majority agreeing with that, but quite a big neutral portion there too. This type of assessment enables me to develop skills beyond university. So over half of them felt that was definitely true, which we were very pleased with. And I was satisfied with the information and support we received. So heading up towards 60% felt that was definitely true. So again, we felt good about that because we did feel like we were kind of doing things just in time. As I said earlier about human nature being what it is, it did take quite a lot to set up, and we felt like we weren't doing a particularly great job at it, but the students obviously felt a little differently, which is good. The survey also had a free-form field that they could write in, and here are some of the comments that they said. So the scenario that we used was a family barbecue, and we, the assessors, were their family member, and they, the student, were themselves. And as the older family member, we were basically believing what the journalist said, or I suppose I should say what the editor put as the headline of the article. And the student was trying to convince us of their view in the conversation. So that family barbecue scenario did discombobulate some of our international students. So family barbecue is a very Kiwi thing. So we're going to call that a family event in future so that they can kind of fill in mentally what their type of family event would be. Some very positive comments there as well. But the fourth one down, adding more exemplars might be helpful. So that was very much something that we felt too. We just basically ran out of time. We wanted to do more than one example video, but we only had time to create one, which we basically were putting together the night before the tutorial session. So we've got a number of useful resources available to you as well that I think Matthew will put in the chat, and maybe we can move on to some of the questions in the chat. I can see that there's quite a few. Thanks, Matthew, for putting those in the chat. That's great.
Just want to let people know as well, if they'd like to ask a question via the microphone, you can put up your virtual hand. There's a hands up symbol in the bottom center of the screen if you're on a desktop machine. That lets us know you'd like to use the microphone. Otherwise, you're very welcome to type your questions into the text chat.
So I guess if we start at the top.
I've answered a few, Leila, further down maybe.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm just trying to see which is. So the last thing was about the scheduling the appointments, and I was saying we used Canvas Scheduler. I think what we would do differently next time, because we gave the students the opportunity of coming in person or on Zoom, we never knew from one student to the next if they were appearing on our computer or our office door. So that was just maybe not ideal. So I think next time we will allocate certain sessions to be online for everyone or in person for everyone, so that students can still choose, but then at least we know a bit more of what we're doing if we're in person or online.
Because there's a question right at the bottom about a maximum cohort size this can work for. So obviously ours was relatively small with 120-ish, of whom 115 turned up. One of our colleagues at the University of Auckland did IOA's second semester last year also, teaching a core stage 1 philosophy course, and he had 600 in his cohort, and they successfully delivered IOAs for a class size of that. And he did that with a group of graduate teaching assistants that would normally be marking written work that was submitted via our learning management system. I know that there have been cases around the world of 800 or 900 students. And I also heard Danielle Logan Fleming talking about someone thinking about doing it for 2,000, but I'm not sure where that was or who was doing that. But it absolutely is scalable.
If I could make a comment, I think Danielle managed, I think in Griffith they did one for 1,200 students. I seem to remember reading that somewhere. I guess comment would be, what are your thoughts on using teams of, the class tutors, as you say, graduate teaching assistants? What are the sorts of things you need to do with that group of people to make sure that the assessment is fair?
So I would recommend role playing it with them and taking turns to be the student and the assessor. So yeah, Andrew, our colleague, said that that was very helpful for his GTAs.
Did they use any sort of moderation, for example, recording and then mock marking and stuff like that?
I don't think he did, but we recorded ours, and we also provided an opportunity for the students to challenge our marking, but we required them to tell us how they felt the particular criterion on the rubric should change, and to give us evidence of that from the recording, and none of ours took that opportunity.
Okay, that's a nice equity-based approach, I suppose. People have to argue their case. I was more thinking along the lines, if you've got a group of 1,200 students and you've got 10 different tutors, then you would probably want to do a moderation, a mock marking moderation exercise before they go into the event. That way they're, I suppose, having similar ideas about the standards of the assessment across the 10 different people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on that, I think it helps to have a very a clear and clean rubric. And we, in the modelling part of our in our tutorial, where we had the students watch a video that Leila and I created across 3 different tutorials, we ended up with the same mark, which was encouraging from that respect.
So yeah, Jerry Harris made the comment about it can be done in groups and marked individually, and yes, there are certainly examples of that internationally. For the students who didn't do it, we really tried to get them all to do it. We sent follow-up emails, and yeah, one student did reschedule, and then yeah, didn't turn out, but yeah, we definitely got non-submission of written work as well. I think it was comparable. The submission rate was comparable with the written assignment the previous year.
So I'm just looking at Francis' question about the scenario. So the material for the assignment was made available in week 2 or week 3. So all the students had a lot of time to prepare. So people doing it earlier, doing their IOA earlier, would only be by a day or 2, and they could choose to do it in the second day or the first day, or so I'm not sure that the extra time would have been much of an advantage.
And yeah, there was similarity in some of the things that they were coming out with. In particular, a large number of them did get the wrong end of the stick about a particular statistical concept. And yeah, we wonder if they had been talking to each other on Discord about that and all gone off on the wrong track. But we dealt with that by just prompting them more in the conversation if they fell into that argument, and if they came out with other things on top of that, we didn't penalise them for it. But if that was the only thing that they were being on about, they didn't get a great mark in the IOA. So the question about the marking time. So the marking time was actually a lot less than what we would have had for a regular assignment. So normally we would have 32 hours of GTA time, and we did these IOAs in 20 hours. So that was the doing and the marking, but the setup and the preparation took a while. But now that we've done that, that time is not going to be replicated in future iterations. So yeah, marking this assignment was quicker, 20 hours versus 32.
There's a question about the rest of assessment in this course. So we do have a secure test and a secure exam in this course, which we're very happy about. And we also have Canvas quizzes, and we have another assignment that is, we didn't use an IOA for the second assignment. The second assignment requires students sourcing their own articles.
I'm curious, did you provide guidelines to the students about use of generative AI tools or not, as the case may be?
We said that.
So sorry.
You go.
Yeah, we said that they could use those tools in their preparation, but that they needed to come to their own judgement, and that was where they were going to be bringing their own personal experience, their life experience, and beliefs and opinions to bear. And we said, it'll be clear to us if you haven't synthesized the information that a Gen AI tool may have provided for you. I think that was borne out in the IOAs. We could tell if they knew what they were talking about or not.
Yes, I was thinking that. Do you feel that you're able to get to the bottom of, a judgment about students' knowledge more efficiently or quickly with an IOA versus, say, a written response in an exam or a report?
So because it's a conversation, you can interrogate things that they say that aren't particularly clear, whereas you can't do that in a written assessment. So I guess that's the strength of it. We wanted to continue to have assignment work throughout the semester, but with the nature of this assignment, it can't be a written submission anymore. It needs to be oral. Otherwise, they are just going to use AI tools. And
yes, that's interesting. The environment is changing. Alistair, I notice you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question via your microphone? You're welcome to do so.
Oh, g'day everyone. Hello from Brisbane. We're bracing for a big wind at the moment. I love the idea of the use of the cognitive principles around interrogate, explain, justify. My background is performing arts with improvising, and I've started working with students to help them get ready for role play and things like that using improvising techniques. Do you think that there is a demand or a need for students to have a little toolkit of skills and techniques to help them carry a conversation and to use those cognitive verbs, explain, justify, in their speech when they're talking to an assessor.
Sorry, Steph, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I guess I think that would be beneficial. I think, you know, by the time our students get to their capstone courses in the stage 3, the 3rd year level, we would hope that they had acquired the skills along the way, but there would be sort of no harm in actually giving students direct opportunities to do that. But I think these oral assessments are part and parcel of doing that. You know, we want students to be able to collaborate together and to work together, and yeah, some of those skills of role playing would be beneficial. I think. I don't think we would have room, nor that necessarily the background in our course to do that ourselves, but I think it would be. It's an interesting idea.
We've had some conversation in the chat, so I'll get to you in a minute, Colin, about non-English background students, non-native English. Did you find any divergence, if you will, in the results of students from non-English versus English-speaking backgrounds?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
So
good.
some apologised at the beginning for their oral English, and we said it's about, you know, the content, not the way in which you're saying it or, you know, pronouncing the words. So it's very much about concentrating on whether they've got the statistical concepts right as opposed to how they're delivering it. And I think that helped alleviate some of their concerns.
That's good. Colin, I notice your hand's up. Would you like to ask a question via the mic? It's located in the bottom center. Yep. You there, Colin? I see your mic is active. You can speak. Yeah, we're not getting anything. You might need to type your question in the text chat if your microphone is not working. Sorry about that. Unless you'd like to try again. Chris, you've got your hand up. Would you like to have a go?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear somebody,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, you said that about 2/3 of the students chose the Zoom option versus the in-person option. And I'm just wondering, I mean, being a bit of a cynic, I'm wondering whether they thought it might be easier to cheat if they were doing it on Zoom. They might have had more kind of notes and things around them, and they would have felt comfortable bringing in person. Do you have a feel for why most of them chose Zoom?
So we don't get a large number of students turning up to class. So I think that could be why. One of the reasons why. I think it possibly could be right. I certainly saw evidence of stuff like flicking up on people's screens. Like I could see the play of light on their face when they were flicking between documents. And some of them were definitely more reading than conversational. But part of the rubric dealt with that, so they lost marks on the criterion for the conversational nature.
Yeah, so do you think, you know, when you run it again, will you still give them the option, or do you think it is better to do it in person?
I think we will continue giving them the option.
Okay.
I think, I think the they get more out of it if they come in person, and the ones that were coming to lectures pretty much all did it in person. But I think, yeah, those students too did better in all of the assessments.
Yeah,
I
fair enough.
think.
It's not surprising. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's just for equity reasons, there are, Auckland is a very spread out city. There are a lot of reasons why people can't get on campus. So I think Zoom is a good option, but the philosophy lecturer, he forced them all to do it in person.
Okay.
So it is an option if you, believe strongly that that's the way to go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Colin, would you like to have another go? Brother Mike?
Okay, how's that?
Yep, working.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm really interested in this idea about what it is that we're actually assessing at any given point in time, and particularly in a first year program to try and help develop capabilities for future work. And there's a lot of conversation around two-lane assessment and things like that, and how we might use these kind of things, which are at least partially authentic, even though we know that students are referring to something else, how we can use them to develop those capabilities, but not necessarily grading them. So I'm interested in that area around, even though we say that we're not judging the way someone is speaking from an accent or so forth, the way that they communicate is a developmental skill. So I'm interested in if you found differences in the way that students engaged in class versus the way that they engaged in the IOA.
That's an interesting question, and as Leila said, we don't get many students in class, and the students that we get in class are usually highly engaged and very chatty and have lots to say and lots to contribute. And so the ones we don't see in class, we haven't really got much experience of interacting with them until we've got our tutorials, which tutorials have a participation component, so there's more come to tutorials than come to class. But I think for us, we're trying to make it sort of fairly low stakes, fairly friendly, fairly informal, literally just putting our toes in the water and seeing how the students will react to this type of assessment.
Do you think that, given that you know that some students online were using help from somewhere, whether it's AI or something else, but those in front of you were not, have you given thought to setting it as open book, so to speak, right from the start? You can use whatever resources you need to find the information, but can you explain it to me?
Yes, and we said that AI was permissible in their preparation, and the students were certainly the ones who came in person. Most of them had a piece of paper with them. We said you could bring a piece of paper if you want to refer to it. I guess the ones who were in front of us did not read verbatim what was on the piece of paper, but a few of them looked down and just checked a few things. Whereas the ones online, as Leila was indicating, some of them definitely were reading. But I guess when we then prompt them to say, well, what do you mean by whatever the concept was that the students were raising, in order to be a sort of an authentic conversation, they need to sort of put things into their own words and back their statements up with some some justification that makes sense in the context of the conversation. And so it sort of didn't, it would jar quite a bit if it was an AI generated piece of script that wasn't necessarily responding to the question that was being posed.
I think my cynic in me will say, I'm just waiting for the moment that the AI video doppelganger bot is in play here.
Yeah.
But, we'll see when and if that happens.
Yeah, and maybe we will be forced to make, to go the philosophy route and do it all in person. It's a bit of a, yeah, bit of a moving feast.
Yeah.
Jerry's talking about having students reflect on their video recordings. I'm wondering if you thought about, it looks like in that scenario that Jerry's talking about, that they just sort of, contacted out of the, of their own volition. I'm wondering if you might put that into the formal assessment arrangements, whether that could be something worth doing.
That sounds like
Yeah,
a really
that's an
valuable thing to do.
Yeah, interesting
Yeah.
idea. So we opted to do only audio for everybody, because although we could get video recording on the Zoom call, we didn't want to have a camera in our offices, because we thought that would be a bit off-putting. But yeah, like closing that loop after the conversation sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, my feeling is you're also dealing with the problem of, chances are these students have never done an interactive oral assessment before. So there's also a certain amount of, this is so new to me that it is outside of my expectation or outside of my experience. I know Danielle's talked about having students do mock runs and practice runs and things like that, which is, probably best practice, but it also eats into time, doesn't it? If you are doing this as a low stakes, early assessment, then there is a chance for that loop learning to happen. Have people reflect on what they did, address, their performance via the recording, because they've then got it from a sort of a third person perspective, as it were. It's like if you give a presentation and someone video records it, and then you look at the video recording afterwards, you think, oh gee, did I really do that?
Yeah.
So you learn, I think, a lot from listening to your own conversations, or listening to your presentations from a different perspective. So yeah. Okay, we're at about the 5-minute mark. So if there's any last questions or comments that people like to make, get in while you can.
Yeah, there's a question about the length of time. So we opted for 5 minutes because that was the equivalent of 2,000 words, which is what the written assessment was 2023 and prior. So yeah, we're trying to make it as similar as possible in terms of the weighting.
I think there was an earlier question as well. Did you think about the students' overall performance? It might have been covered and I might have been just zoned out. So, the students' performance on this task versus the equivalent task, the written task of previous years.
So we haven't done anything formally, but what we believe, and it's just total conjecture, we don't have any statistics to back it up, is that we feel that the engagement from students, in this course often we've had a bit of a long tail with students that just don't really engage from early on, and this we believe, got students more engaged from an early stage. I think partly to do with the the practice that they were doing in the tutorials, and maybe just sharing with each other this new weird assessment that was bearing down on them, and sort of collective talking about it. Again, don't have any evidence to back it up, but that's what we felt, really. And the other thing is, we really did feel a lot more connected with more of our students because we were interacting with them more.
That's actually an
in this way.
interesting and I think valuable aspect to it, isn't it? You know, the educators can be more connected to their students in a way that you're probably not through written tasks or interactions in a larger room, or even a tutorial room. You've got 20 or 30 students in the space with you. You might have a conversation with, you know, random students from week to week, but you know, there's no sort of, you know, systematic way of getting around to have a conversation with every one of them.
That's
whereas
right.
this structures that reasonably nicely, even if it's only, you know, 10 minutes for the whole semester.
That's right.
Yeah. So, you know, I do wonder, you know, if this could be a series of things rather than just once off, that you do it, you know, maybe twice a semester. Obviously requires rejigging of assessment requirements and things like that, but you know, I do wonder if that helps you then later when you come to do the marking of, say, the exam. You've actually had a chance to speak to each one of these students.
That's right. Yes.
And you might have, you know, give you some form of inkling into their understanding of what you're seeing on paper. So
yeah.
Okay, we are at the hour, more or less. So thank you very much, folks, for coming along. Perhaps a little more relaxed pace this time round. Transforming assessment will be back again in the future. I'm going to be taking about a month off because I'll be traveling overseas for a while, but we will be back, and there are some things in the works. And I say we, I mean me, because I'm the one-man band in this thing. But yeah, so thanks very much for coming. The recording will be on their website, and you know, tell your friends. Thank you very much to Leah and Stephanie. Great to have you along. And hopefully,
and thank you, Matthew.
Hopefully you'll begin
Thanks for
involved in
having
our
us.
sessions at some time in the future as well.
And thanks to everyone for all the great questions. And yeah, all the best. Happy travels, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. For those people, you can get out of the session just by closing the browser tab. Other than that, I shall stop the recording.